Dave, I see this is an intensely personal day for you and your family. Would you be able to share that?
Well, yeah. I mean, it's not something that really weighed a lot on my conscience or my consciousness actually throughout my life. But now I'm 60 years old, and my family is kind of in disarray. Like my blood family, we don't really talk that much. And there my uncle Charlie Baldry lays in a grave in Sicily because he was defending us from what is going on today in the United States of America. And I'd just like to stop there. Thank you.
Well, I'm thinking of a lot of different people this day, including my parents and my wife's parents. Both my wife and I are first-generation Canadian. My parents came from Britain, and my wife's parents came from Holland, and were liberated by the Canadian and British forces. On my side, my father was conscripted into the British Armed Forces, and then along came a gentleman by the name of Lord Bevan, and he created the Bevan Boys. And the Bevan Boys were conscripted into the coal mines in Britain. They weren't frontline fighters, but it was equally dangerous. My father was involved in a cave-in in these coal mines, and you can't think of coal mines as we know them today. These were completely different back then. And my father had to pull a blasting cap out of a detonation charge while the cave-in had occurred in order to save his comrades and himself.
If anything, is the sacrifices of all the women. I spent lots of time growing up. I'm getting old. I spent lots of time growing up with both my grandmothers here on the coast. Both of their lives have been devastated by losing husbands, fathers, sons. One grandmother lost her father of her 4 young children, and then the next war lost the youngest son from that. And the other grandmother lost various people, but especially her brother, who she was very attached to. And I was very conscious of it because I spent so much time with him. And I think I mention it partly because, you can multiply it by many thousands of times. All the women made huge contributions to the war efforts, but they also made huge sacrifices that people don't talk about that much.
My dad was the first Canadian wounded in the Second World War, and he was so frustrated that Canada was not doing anything. It reminded me of that news thing this morning where the American joined up with the Canadians. And my dad went over, paid his own way to Scotland, and joined up with his dad's regiment, the Scottish Highlanders. And then he was in Dunkirk and shot up. And then he was on a hospital ship, and the Germans dropped a bomb down the funnel of the hospital ship, and then he was blown out into the water. And you know that poem, The Little Boats of Britain, that picked everybody up out of the water? Well, my dad was one of those. Then he had to get back to Canada, but he was in such rough shape. He shook continuously, like trembled. They did in Edinburgh, the Faculty of Medicine was experimenting with the shock treatments. So he got shock treatments, and yet when they still all pulled together, his relatives, to ship him back to Canada, they would have these welcoming teas in Battleford, North Battleford. And my dad couldn't hold the teacups. So even though we have pictures of him with these teas that were honoring him, and he was the only war veteran back at that point, it was just really interesting listening to him. And he really made sure that we grew up honoring the veterans. So I'm just so thrilled. It just makes me cry that you're doing this show, and not just what the fellow said about the ones that gave their lives, because my dad gave a lot in terms of what would be like a broken spirit, and he was still really feisty Canadian, playing the bagpipes all the time on this particular day. So thank you.